If you accept dental insurance in your practice, the biggest headache for any office is to maintain the insurance operations. And we want to get paid for the work we do on our patients. So the ultimate goal is to collect 100% of production, or close to 100% of the production. And to make sure that happens is exactly what we're going to cover in this video. If you're new to this channel, my name is Neil Shah. This is where I share what I'm doing in my own dental practice in terms of running the everyday business operations. I share with you what's working, what's not working, my wins and losses. And to stay updated on this type of content, join our free newsletter over at dentalstartupacademy.com. I will share the link below this video for those of you who believe in taking action. So we're gonna go through each of these important steps that have to be completed. From the top, it's the setup of your practice management system when it comes to insurances, to the patient appointment, all the way down to you generating the claims and actually getting paid for them. But just because you send the claims in does not mean you're going to get paid. Stick around to the end and I'll show you my old way of staying on top of unpaid claims, and then also share with you the new system or what I'm doing today so me and the entire team in the office can stay on top of the insurance AR and to make sure that we get paid for the work we do on our patients. I've also put together a PDF file. Think of it like a checklist that your team can use for the important things that have to be in place to make sure you get paid for your claims. And I'll share the link to download that PDF in the description right below this video. Because I use Open Dental in my practice, a lot of the concepts I discuss, I will show the implementation using Open Dental. If you don't use Open Dental in your practice, that's okay. Same ideas and concepts still apply. You just have to figure out how to do it for your practice management system. All right, let's get right into it. So what happens if you're not set up correctly when it comes to seeing insurance patients in your office? Well, simply one is claims getting rejected or kicked back even before they're sent to the insurance company. Second is wrong calculation of patient out-of-pocket or patient obligation. If you're not able to tell patient a close estimate of what they'll owe for the work they need, they're less likely to move forward. Even if they do move forward and let's say they complete their work, you generate a claim, now your payment is less than what you expected. Now you end up passing that balance onto the patient. Now you've told the patient they owe more money than they were originally told. And patients hate financial surprises. Other thing that can happen is claim payments going to the patient instead of your practice. Claim payments getting denied because your practice isn't set up correctly to send out attachments on time. Or worse, denied claims because let's say patient reached their maximum and your team was not aware of it when the patient came in for their crown, for example. And there's lots more. And if you're seeing insurance patients, you've had either one or more of these happen in your practice. I've had every single one of these things happen to me. So I've learned the hard way. And all of this led to obviously one thing. Basically my practice not getting paid for the work we did on our patients, which means we did not collect what we produced. And if it's not fixed, the AR or the accounts receivable of the office is going to get out of control. 99% of all of this has to do with the setup of your practice management system and you and your team staying on top of patient benefits. Unfortunately, that is part of playing the insurance game. You and the team members have to be on top of patient benefits if you want to get paid, because patients have no idea. So let's start at the top. First is the setup of your insurances within your practice management system. And when it comes to this, first thing is the fee schedules. If you're in network with insurance companies, you need to make sure that fee schedule for each of those plans is entered into your system. And if you don't have this done, you are not going to be able to quote the patient their co-pays when you're presenting finances. This is when you let the patient know what's expected of them and what the insurance is going to cover. And you can't quote them a close estimate of what they're going to owe if the fee schedules are not entered into your system. And usually you'll have a fee schedule for your UCR fees, which means usual customary reasonable fee for your office fee schedule, as well as a fee schedule entered for each of the plan you're in network with or in contract with. You can also create out-of-network fee schedules, and this is specifically for offices that are out-of-network, which means you are not obligated to follow the fee schedule set by the insurance companies. All right, up next is tracking write-offs. If you are accepting PPO insurances in your practice, you want to enable tracking write-offs. Now, write-off is the difference between your UCR fee and the in-network contracted fee. In Open Dental, for instance, this is easily accomplished by selecting something called PPO percentage from the drop-down option under something called the plan type. And you do this when you're either adding an insurance plan for a family or editing an existing insurance plan. There's also another option in Open Dental that a lot of offices use. It's called category percentage. However, if you select this option, you are not going to be tracking write-offs. If you're in network with specific plans, Open Dental does not recommend this option because you will not be able to track write-offs when you're submitting claims or presenting treatment plans to patients. So keep it simple. If you are in network with PPO plans, just select the option of PPO percentage and make sure you have fee schedules entered for each of those plans you're in network with. All right, moving forward with this video, we're going to assume that you've got fee schedules entered and you're using the option of PPO percentage to track write-offs. If you're using something else besides Open Dental, you want to make sure that tracking write-offs is enabled for your system when you're submitting claims or presenting treatment plans. All right, up next is the system for sending claims and attachments electronically. Whichever vendor you decide to go with, I don't favor one over another. I've used Dental Exchange in my own practice since day one, and I use them to send claims as well as attachments. At the end of the day, we use them to send claims in a batch and also get requests for any pending attachments. Whatever system you decide to use, you need a way for your team to access their portal, which allows them to review, one, any kickback or rejected claims, so you don't delay those claims getting paid. And second, if there's any claims that need attachments, that should also be reviewed daily from the portal so you don't delay those claims getting processed. All right, let's move on to the next important step. Now, we've talked about so far the setup of insurance within the practice management system. The next important step is the patient level setup. Now, this is the stage at which you're either adding an insurance plan for a patient or family or modifying an existing plan. If a patient changed insurance plans or they tell you they have the same plan, but they opted for more benefits, you're gonna need to edit an existing insurance plan with updated benefit information. Now, to attach an insurance to a patient or modify an existing plan, you'll need to know what the patient benefits are. And the way to do that is through insurance verification. Now, instead of showing you the details of how to verify patient's insurance in this video, I've actually done a video in the past that goes over in detail, step by step, on how to do that. And I'll post a link to that video in the description below this video. There's also a template you'll be able to download, which you can follow and fill in while you're verifying the patient benefits. After you watch that video, there's also another video on insurance verification I did that is specific to Open Dental. And how often are you gonna do this step? Well, you're gonna do it for every new patient. When the new patient calls your practice, you make their appointment, you confirm their appointment time, so-and-so, and you let them know that you're gonna go ahead and call the insurance, verify their benefits, and you let them know that, hey, if there's any issues, you'll call them back. But if it's an existing patient, let's say they're coming back after 2 years or so, you may wanna check because chances are their insurance may have changed. So you may wanna check and make sure that they're active under that insurance. So now let's assume you've verified the patient benefits, you've filled out a template with all the benefit information. Now you need to enter all this benefit information into the practice management system. Now, this is an important step because it involves data entry. As simple as it should be, whenever there is data entry involved, it can lead to errors. Let's look at an example of how you're going to do this on Open Dental. For anything else besides Open Dental, whatever system you use, maybe the UI, the user interface, the buttons, the fields look different, but the same concepts apply. So for Open Dental, for new patients, under the family module, you're gonna click Add Insurance, and then it's gonna ask you if it's a subscriber you're entering the information for. You're gonna click Yes. And what I wanna say is, whenever you're attaching a plan for a family or a patient, for a new patient family, you want to get in the habit of adding the subscriber information first before attaching non-subscriber family members. So at the top, you're going to have your relationship to subscriber. You're telling the system whether this patient you're entering details for is a subscriber or policyholder or is a family member of the policyholder, and you must select how they're related. Primary or secondary insurance or supplemental insurance. Now, you have to enter whether this is a primary or secondary insurance for this patient, right? A patient can have insurance of their own because their employer is offering the dental insurance, but they can also be covered under their spouse, and whether or not they're secondary or primary is determined by a coordination of benefits. This is where you dictate whether this is primary or secondary. In this specific case, 1 is for primary and 2 is for secondary. Going down to carrier information. This is the specific plan the patient has, and most systems will come with like a pre-populated list of carriers, so you should be pre-selecting them from the list, and it will go and fill in those fields for you once you select them from the list. You want to make sure the electronic ID is filled in. It should fill in automatically if you're selecting a carrier from a list. But when you're enrolling with an insurance plan or going into a contract with a new plan that's not already on the list, then you're going to have to enter this information once manually. For the first time, it will save to your list for future use. If you don't know the electronic ID, when you enroll in the plan, when you're verifying the patient insurance over the phone, you can ask the insurance rep. But if it's not filled in, your claim is not going to be sent electronically. So you have to print and mail the claim. Group name is usually the employer name and it's optional. Group number, this is a requirement, obviously. Your system may let you leave it blank, but your claim is going to get kicked back and you'll see it in the portal before it's even sent to the insurance company. Now, plan type, this is what I was talking about earlier. If you're in network with PPOs, you want to just stick to the PPO percentage option here, all right, which will allow you to track write-offs as well as allow you to basically quote patients close to accurate estimate of what they're going to owe for the work they need. And of course, this is what Open Dental recommends as well. If you're taking Medicaid or flat copay type of plan, you're going to want to select that option. Capitation refers to HMO or DMO type of plans. If you're going to be in out of network with certain plans, you're going to want to select category percentage option here. But just to keep things simple, if you're in network with certain plans, just go ahead and select the PPO percentage type plan here. As I mentioned earlier, you have to enter in fee schedules for each plan you are in network with. And when you've done that, from the drop down, while you're entering the insurance information for this patient, you're going to want to select the fee schedule that should be attached to this plan. As easy as it sounds and as simple as it should be, to select the proper plan or fee schedule here, lots of mistakes happen here. With everything going on at the front, maybe your team is doing this in the middle of the day. Sometimes what happens is they enter in all the correct benefit information. However, they select the wrong fee schedule. And now what that does is throws off everything in the treatment plan, which also throws off the fee you may be quoting to the patient when you're presenting finances. All right, let's look at the policyholder information. You're looking at subscriber ID. Now this is super important. Double check this, and if you have this incorrectly entered, your claims are going to get kicked back. For some plans, they use the patient's social as a subscriber ID. Now, some patients will tell you that they have this so-and-so insurance, but the only info they have is the group number and they don't have the ID. So when you go to call the insurance, for example, when you're verifying their plan, they'll need the patient's ID to give you the info. So since the patient didn't have it, and if you don't have the social, you're not going to be able to verify the benefits. Depending on who you speak with or which plans, they can actually look up the patient by name, date of birth, verifying their address, etc. And they'll give you the actual ID to use for sending in the claims. Or they'll tell you to use their social. So if you don't have the patient's social, you'll need to get it from them. Moving on to effective dates. Now you can leave these blank. However, if a patient's plan has waiting period, then you'll need to enter the from date to dictate when the benefit kicks in. Assignment of benefits. It basically means where do the insurance payments go? Or do they go to the patient or do they come to your practice? By default, you should have this checked. By default, you should have this checked off, and every system will allow you to have this checked off by default. And it just means that when you generate a claim for a plan, the payment will go to your office instead to the patient. Unless, of course, you turn the setting off and you want the payment to go to the patient. All right, let's get to the actual benefit information that you're entering the data for a specific plan. This is where you enter the benefit information that you've gathered either through a phone call to the insurance rep, through web portal, fax, etc. Again, if you're not using Open Dental, it doesn't matter. You're going to do the same thing on your system. I'm not going to go into each one of these fields and what it means because that's not the point of this video. But what I do want to focus on is the importance of this screen, where the mistakes are made, why you need to enter some of these details, and why some of these may be overkill and waste of your time. But if you do need a reference on some of these things you see on the screen, like maximum frequency limitation, I do have 2 videos that I've done in the past specifically on this topic of dental insurance terminology. One of them is dental insurance terminology, most important terms you need to know for daily office management. And there's a part 2 to that, which is dental insurance terminology part 2. I will post the links to both of these videos in the description below, so I highly recommend you watch them if you're new to the world of dental insurance. Now, if you verified patient benefits before, you know there are some plans you have to call the insurance for, and there are some plans you don't have to call. You could get the information from the web portal, the fax, etc. But you only realize this after you've done it for some time. Regardless, I'd always recommend going to the web portal first to get all the information you need to fill out the specific details in each of the fields, okay? And then going to call the rep or getting the fax if you need additional information that you're not able to get from the web portal. Every office has specific needs when it comes to certain procedures. For instance, in my practice, we always want detailed benefit information on clear aligner procedures, ortho procedures, because we do quite a bit of that, implants, extraction, grafting, etc. So we have a template of specific codes on top of the general stuff that we need. And a lot of the times you can take these codes and put it into the web portal to get the benefit information. And I do want to mention, now we're starting to see a lot of these automated services that give you this information, as well as there's third-party agencies that employ humans who call the insurance reps for you. Regardless of which system you use, whether it's an automated system or you have an agency that calls insurance verification for you, the end result is the same. The benefit information has to go in the right place in the practice management system. This way, you can present finances to patient, giving them a close estimate of what they're going to owe for their work, and also so your reporting doesn't reflect garbage data. One of the areas where mistakes are made in terms of data entry is when you're entering frequencies. Let me show you an example. So this is an example where some mistakes happen. This is the edit benefit screen. And what you're looking at is the frequencies. For example, I just want to go over this example here where you enter the frequencies for bite wings, panel, /FMX, and exams. So for example, let's say a patient's insurance plan allows 2 sets of bite wings per calendar year. All right, so you would have to enter 2 here and then also select the corresponding option. Okay, so sometimes with everything going on at the front desk, they can get overwhelmed, and a lot of times they'll put 2 here, click OK, they're done. However, if you look what's left here, it says every X years, and X is 2 here. So technically, instead of telling the system, telling Open Dental in this case, that this patient's plan allows 2 per year, you're telling Open Dental that it allows every 2 years. So 1 set of bite wings every 2 years. All right. So, and if the patient were to come in for this and you generate a claim, it would actually tell you that patient owes out of pocket because they're going over the frequency. Okay. Which is not correct. It's just incorrect data entry because the insurance plan allows 2 per year. So the right option to pick here would be number per benefit year. So 2 per benefit year. Okay. Let's also look at exams. There are plans who allow, there are plans who allow 2 exams per calendar year. There are plans who are set up to give patients 2 exams every 6 months. Then there are some plans which make it even more confusing, which allow 2 exams every 12 consecutive months. So what you have to do is sometimes the team forgets to enter this, whoever is doing it. It's exams is 2, then they will just select this option per benefit year, but it's actually incorrect. It's 2 every 12 consecutive months. If you left it here, for example, per benefit year, press OK. Now, when you're scheduling patient's recall, Open Dental or whatever system you're using is not going to give you some sort of a warning that, hey, you're going over the frequency limit of the patient. And while the patient is on the phone, you may not even realize it. Schedule that appointment, patient comes in, you generate a claim, you're assuming that it's covered at 100%. However, because you entered this incorrectly, when the claim comes back, it's going to deny because they're going to say, hey, patient has reached frequency limitation. So because the frequency was actually 2 in the last 12 months. So you have to tell the system what exactly the benefit is. And that's why data entry is so important here. So I just wanted to show you this example why that particular thing is important, okay? And it applies to everything else that you see on the screen. There's this other section where you can enter additional benefit information, percent coverages, time period, etc. I mentioned earlier that every office is going to have their own needs of what procedure codes they need. For instance, an endodontist office is going to have way less codes they need to verify compared to a general dentist office. In my practice, for instance, on top of the basic coverage tables, we also get detailed benefit information on perio, membrane placement, whether it's resorbable, non-resorbable, implants, extraction, grafting, as well as clear aligners. Because those are the procedures I do routinely in my practice, let me show you where the inefficiency in this was and how we fixed it. So what we used to do was enter each of the procedure codes, all the codes that I mentioned for all the services that we routinely do in my practice. The team would individually add all the procedures into this area here called the other benefits. Okay, so for example, you would enter a code for 7953, which is bone grafting. They would basically add the percentage coverage, add the time period, quantity, whatever, and then hit OK, and then add additional information. Let's say this is for mouth guard. Okay, so they would do this for at least the 7-8 codes that I record on every single patient. Now, that itself took like almost, a good 5 to 10 minutes. It was completely inefficient for each of the new patients that were coming in, or you re-verifying insurance for existing patients who changed insurance plans, right? So instead of having to do this 8 or 9 times and adding benefits for each patient, instead what we decided to do was this. Let me show you. In Open Dental, there is a built-in feature. If you go to setup, it's called quick paste notes, okay? And you can make up any arbitrary number of notes in a category. For example, we made one for insurance note. So for example, if I double click here, abbreviation is INS. So if you hit the question mark followed by INS, anywhere within Open Dental you're typing up notes, this information, it would get pasted in automatically. So for example, when my team is verifying benefits, it would put in this template with this code. These are the codes that I look for each patient whose insurance is verified, all right? Because these are the procedures that we routinely do. And there's other information that's written next to it. But basically, this would be copied, pasted into each patient. So let me just show you an example, all right? So let's cancel this out. So let's say they've just verified this patient's insurance. Let me bring this up here. All right, you've entered in all the coverage information, the percentages, the basic frequencies for preventative, the deductible, et cetera, et cetera. That shouldn't take long. That you can get from a fax, right? And now if you go to plan note, there's a little section here called plan note. Now remember what I said about quick paste note is question mark INS. As soon as I type that, Open Dental automatically pastes the entire template here. So only thing my team has to do is they already have the codes in, and whatever they're verifying over the phone or through the web portal, they just put the information here. Cover, whatever, 60%, every 3 years or whatever it may be. Or usually is lifetime per tooth area, lifetime per tooth. Okay, so for example, now if you hit OK, where it appears is in this red area. Okay. Right in here, okay? So now, if I'm looking at a patient, if I'm basically going over the patient's finances or treatment plan in the operatory, I can quickly look this up right over here and all the benefits would be listed, okay? We don't need to go ahead and, yes, the advantage I lose by not having entered this information is Open Dental will track for me. Like for example, if 9944 is allowed every 5 years and 5 years later patient comes back, or let's say 2 years later patient comes back because they cracked their mouth guard and patient happens to have the same insurance, I entered into the treatment plan. Open Dental will actually tell me that, hey, it's not covered because it's under the frequency. All right. But I typically don't care for that because usually what we do whenever I know which 10 or 11 procedures that we do routinely, we always check this area, okay? And then immediately I know what the stipulation will be, whether it's every 5 years or et cetera, et cetera. And then I just check whether or not it was done in that time period. But I think that saves us way more time than having to enter each of these codes, the percentage coverage, any stipulation, et cetera, et cetera. And plus here you can write more notes, okay? So I hope that's helpful. So far at the top, we have talked about the practice level setup when it comes to insurances. Then we talked about patient level setup where we verify insurance and attach all the benefit information to the patient's chart in the practice management system. Now let's talk about the next critical point, which is the patient appointment. There are things that need to be done, checked, and in place before, during, and after the patient appointment. So let's talk about the before patient appointment. So the first thing is, which we've already talked about earlier, is that prior to patient's appointment, you need to make sure their insurance is verified and all their benefits information is attached to their chart. You also want to make sure that their insurance is active and they also have benefit remaining on their plan to cover them for the procedure they're coming in for today. Now, if you're running, let's say for example, 4 hygiene columns and 2 doctor columns, that's a whole lot of patients to do this for every single patient in your practice. That's a lot of work to make sure every single patient on your schedule for all the providers is active and they have enough benefits remaining. That's a lot of work. So this is what I do in my practice. We only make sure if a patient is active and they have enough benefits remaining on their plan if it's a non-recall patient, especially if it's a patient that we haven't seen in a while. Let's say they're coming in for their crown, multiple restorative, bridge work, et cetera, and it's been 8 months since I saw them and they're finally coming in after they schedule their bridge. We're gonna make sure their plan is active and they've got enough benefits remaining on their plan. It's too time consuming to do all of this for a recall patient. So for example, let's say recall patient came in, they came in for their exam and cleaning, you sent in the claim got denied because maybe the patient isn't active anymore. Normally in our practice, what we do, we call up the patient and get the new insurance information. Let's say maybe they, after getting the claim back, the insurance denied the exam because maybe you reached the frequency limitation. Well, because the out-of-pocket it's a lower amount, most patients don't mind paying such a small balance. And in the rare occasions that does happen, depending on the amount of money that's owed, we simply leave the balance on their account or leave a note on their chart as a reminder to collect at their next recall visit. Another scenario that happens that creates issues is when a patient comes to see you after they've seen a specialist like an endodontist or a surgeon, etc. Let's assume it's a new patient that's called your office to schedule their crown because they've just recently completed their root canal at the endodontist office. Now, your team goes ahead and schedules their crown appointment, but they don't know, they've collected the insurance information, but they don't know what the patient's status is in terms of how much benefits they're remaining, what they've used up, etc. If everything's done correctly, as we've been discussing so far, the team will know that this patient has no more benefits left because they've used up all their benefits at the endodontist office. And of course, this information was also attached correctly to the patient's chart. And at this point, what we usually do is have the office team reach out to the patient and letting them know that they're going to be responsible for the entire out-of-pocket for the crown because they've maxed out. And you'd think that patients would know this information, but about 30% of the time, they're completely shocked and said, oh my God, I'll owe the entire $800 for the crown. The insurance will cover nothing. They had no idea that their maximum was only $1,000, and between their consult visit and the actual root canal, the endodontist ended up using up all the benefits. And sometimes the patient will actually cancel their appointment. So depending on when the patient has scheduled for the crown and how far in advance your team reached out to them, they'll have an opportunity to actually put somebody else in that time slot. So by doing all these things, and having checks and balances, you're not only making sure you're going to get paid for the services, you're also scheduling efficiently and minimizing big holes in the schedule. Now let's talk about what happens during the patient appointment. So far, you've done the stuff that you're supposed to do before the patient walks in for their appointment, like insurance verification, attaching the insurance information to the patient's chart. Remember, as I said earlier, everything you do at each step sets you up for the next step. If you're going to be presenting treatment and finances to the patient, and you've sequenced your treatment plan in your practice management system and everything's set up correctly, your system should be able to easily display what the insurance reimbursement is going to be, as well as what the estimated patient out-of-pocket is supposed to be. Whether it's you, the doctor, who's presenting finances and the treatment plan, or a treatment coordinator who's presenting the finances to the patient, this entire process will go much smoother if all this is in place. So technically, if everything's set up correctly, anyone in the office can present finances to the patient. Maybe it's a small treatment plan with some basic restorative, and your clinical assistant can also present finances to the patient while you go numb up a patient in another room. And if you've got a wireless credit card terminal in the operatory, well, now you can collect deposit from the patient. Your clinical assistant can also set up their next appointment, and now the patient does not have to stop at the front. All right. And this is huge for relieving bottleneck at the front office area, especially for offices that see lots of patients during the day. So let's talk about what happens at checkout. Well, now that all the benefit information is attached to the patient's chart, and when you go to mark the patient appointment completed at checkout, the system should be able to tell you what the expected insurance reimbursement is going to be, as well as what the patient out-of-pocket is going to be for all the procedures attached to that appointment. So prior to marking the appointment completed, you want to make sure that all the procedures in that appointment are accurate. Once you do that, you can go ahead and mark the appointment completed and then generate the claim. You don't have to send it yet. You can just go ahead and generate the claim. And then you want to collect the patient out of pocket, and you want to mark it into the patient system and allot it to the procedures that are completed and to the actual provider who did the work, if your system allows for this. And if it's the end of day, you can go ahead and batch send all the claims that have been generated throughout the day. Okay, so great. Your claims are sent. Now what? Well, that's not the end of it. Let's now talk about what happens after the claims are generated in terms of best practices. So now you've got all these pending claims that are sent out but not paid. Some of these claims, your office is going to receive payments that you would expect, which means the patient should not have any leftover balance to pay and things are good. But percentage of these claims, you're going to receive payments that is less than what you expect, either because the insurance denied a procedure, maybe there was an exclusion clause that was missed. Some of these claims, your team hasn't heard anything back from the insurance. Maybe they're waiting on your team to send in a requested documentation like attachments. Or maybe your team did send in the attachments and the claims are still not processed. So how do you keep up with all of these different claims for all these patients, which may be in different stages of its life cycle? Some of the claims you may have appealed, so you're waiting on the results. Sometimes you have to resend the claim because the insurance company never got them. Sometimes the claim comes back telling you that it was miscoded, so now you have to submit another procedure code for the same claim to get paid, etc. Now, depending on the volume of patients you're seeing, this is a lot to stay on top of. So what's the solution? The solution is to build routines in your practice to follow up on claims past 30 days. So anytime a claim is sent, and if it's been 30 days, you've got to follow up on it. So track every pending claim and follow up on every single claim, and writing good notes during your follow-up. If it requires a further follow-up, you've got to create a reminder for yourself or for that team member whoever is supposed to be following up on this, for them to know what's going on. If you've written good notes, whoever is doing the next follow-up is going to know what's happened during the previous phone calls or follow-up attempts. And you're going to do this until you get paid or you're ready to close this claim because you realize the insurance company is not going to pay on this. You've taken a decision and you're ready to pass on this unpaid balance to the patient, at which point this unpaid balance becomes part of patient AR. I want to stop here and say there's a difference between write-offs in terms of the difference between your office fee and the insurance fee, which is normal when you're in network, part of a PPO network, or the write-off, meaning insurance didn't pay what you expect, so you write off the balance and not charge the patient, okay? There's a big difference here. So next, when you're ready to close the claim, you should close the claim in your system. And if there, like I said earlier, if there's a balance that you want to recover from the patient, it needs to be reflected on their account, at which point it becomes part of patient AR. So let's actually go over the implementation. How do you actually accomplish everything we've discussed so far? Now, you can do this with any system you're using, whether you're using Dentrix, EagleSoft, Curve, Open Dental, whatever it may be. Whatever practice management system you're using, you should be able to do this to track pending claims. Now, with Open Dental, I'm going to show you how we used to do it and what we're doing today to stay on top of pending claims. So we're in Open Dental here, and I want to show you guys what we used to do before we developed an actual system to stay on top of our claims. All right, so if you go to reports and you go under standard, and again, this is referring to specifically following up on claims that are outstanding past 30 days, or you could pick 20 days in your office if that's what you're using. Outstanding insurance claims, and then by default, when this screen comes up, Open Dental enters 30 for you, which is an average number you can use. I don't want to, right now the default is pre-authorization options. It says including pre-auths. I don't care for them. I'm going to leave them out for a second. I just want to see claims that are pending past 30 days. So on here on this screen, I have all the information, like who the carrier is, which patient, when the service was performed, when the claim was sent, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so now these are a total of 17 claims. There's a number at the bottom. The amount that you're seeing, the one big problem I have with this is the amount that you're seeing here. These are not the amount that you should be expecting from insurance. This is the office gross fee. This is your UCR fee that's billed to the insurance. So I would have wished that they would show you the net adjusted dollar amounts that's expected from the insurance. So if I were to, so the one way we were doing this, so remember, I just mentioned in the video earlier that you should have routines in place. So on a daily basis in my practice, you would pull up a report past 30 days because the reason why that is because depending on if you're in the office every day, whether it's every day, 4 days, 3 days a week, every day that goes by, you're going to have more claims adding on to this list that goes past 30 days, unless they're paid or closed, of course. So if I'm looking at this list, let's say we would click on this patient. Right? This is the pending claim. This is what we did, et cetera, et cetera. It shows you what your office fee is, et cetera, okay? And what the expected write-off is, what the insurance estimate is. So remember earlier I mentioned I would have wanted to see that number on the front screen, but I can't see it unless I click into it. All right, so this is a specific claim we're looking at. And if you go towards the bottom, there's a tab here called Status History. Okay, that allows you to keep track of each claim with custom claim tracking statuses that you may have created. If you haven't done that already, you can just go to opendental.com and look up how to create these custom claim tracking statuses. All right, I'm not going to go into that in this video. We've already done that. So let's say this is a claim that team is following up on. I would go ahead and add, they've just called the insurance company, or maybe they looked it up on the insurance portal that, okay, they haven't received it, we need to resend this, or they spoke to the rep. So you can put a note here, spoke to the rep, they don't have this claim on file, need to resend, etc., etc. Okay, and then I can just hit update. All right, and it puts in the date, timestamp for you, the description, which you selected from the dropdown, and the custom note. All right, and then I can click OK and get out of this screen and come back to this screen. All right, one issue is like, okay, so I just said it needs more info, so you would expect that to pop up here. You don't see it because it's not refreshed. So either you can click in here on the box, press enter, or you would have to hit refresh, and you can see that got reflected again. Okay, so one of the, let's say you're doing this. Let's say your team is following up on these claims. It's been, they follow up on it, whatever, 7, 8 claims in a day. At the end of the day, me as a manager, the owner of my practice, I wanted to see how many claims have actually been followed up on today. I can't see that. That's the biggest problem I have with this list. Again, this list is small, right? We're looking at test data. But let's say I make this 10 patients or 10 days or something, okay? The list grows larger. And depending on the volume of patients you're seeing, you've got one provider, maybe you've got hygienists. Maybe you're seeing between the provider and the hygienist, you're seeing maybe close to 20 patients or 25 patients or 30 patients a day. This list is going to grow larger. You could have hundreds of claims on here or even more. So now looking through this list on a daily basis and actually making sure when are these claims being followed up on? All right. So yeah, I can see this is, okay, this claim was sent in December. It's still in resend mode. No one's done anything. The other thing is it shows me the latest status, but unless I click into it, I can't see how many times someone's followed up on this. All right. So unless I click into it, go to status history, and then it'll show, because technically I can add further attempts. I can add more attempts on here, but I can't see that unless I click into it, and it's just too time consuming. I have to do this for every single patient. So if I want a bigger picture at the end of the day, what's going on in terms of how many claims are followed up, or how many claims are followed up, how many times each patient was called, and when the next follow-up is due, I can't see that with this at all, right? And that's one of the reasons why we got away from using this built-in custom claim tracking system, and we developed our in-house solution, all right, which I'll get to in a minute. So again, I can't even see, let's say a month goes by, this entire month, I want to see how many claims were followed up on, all right? What claims that were being followed up on actually got paid as a direct result of those follow-ups. This is important to me because, I like to tie my percent bonus to the team members who's actually following up on this. If I have an insurance team, if I have a bigger office, and if I have 2 people that are just dedicated to doing insurance, I want to be able to track what that ROI is on their follow-ups or getting claims paid. All right. So those are some of the biggest problems I have with the built-in report on this. So that's what we used to do. But over time, I realized there are some problems with the system. The only way I know the system works is if I look at the insurance ER report. I don't have a way to see which claims are actually being followed up on, which claims need further follow-ups, etc. If I look at the pending claims report, unless I click into each claim that's pending and see if there's actually notes written in it, I would have no way to quickly see which claims are being followed up on. And now, as an owner or a manager of a practice, let's say if I've got multiple associates, multiple hygienists with lots of moving pieces in the practice, there's lots going on. There's lots of claims being generated. As an owner or the manager, I need to be able to quickly see a bigger picture of what's happening. Maybe today I want to see how many claims were being followed up on. Why do I say today? Because remember, I mentioned earlier, you need routines where you're following up on pending claims that are past 30 days. Because on average, you're assuming that it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get paid on a claim. So every day, there's new pending claims getting tacked on to past 30 days. So this should be happening on a daily basis. So maybe at the end of today, as a manager, as an owner of my own practice, I want to see how many claims were followed up on today. And for the claims that were being previously followed up on, what did we get paid? Because I like to see that, because I like to tie the percent that we recovered as a bonus to the team that's responsible for this job. And that's not just for today. I can pull up the report at the end of the week, end of the month, and I can actually see over the last 6 months, how has my team done, whoever's responsible for the insurance, whether it's one person, whether it's a team, or it's an outside agency that's added onto the console, what have they recovered for me in terms of pending claims? How much money actually ended up in my bank account because of our follow-up efforts? So how do we accomplish this? How did we actually do this in our own office? Well, that's why we developed Teamio as our in-house solution as an answer to this problem. And this is one of the aspects of Teamio, which is the outstanding AR reports, meaning you'll be able to see as an owner, as a manager, detailed reports on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, what's going on in terms of insurance AR. So let me show you how we do it today. So let me show you how we do this today. I went over how we used to do it on Open Dental. Let me show you now how we tackle outstanding claims or insurance AR with using Teamio, which is the in-house solution that we built for our own practice, which is now opened up to all the Open Dental practices and all the Open Dental offices that we have so far and how they're tackling it. And this is exactly what I train them on when I talk to their team who deals with insurance in their practices. Right? So if I'm looking at today's dashboard, immediately just by looking at it, if I scroll down, whoever deals with insurance, obviously they're not dealing with unscheduled treatment, recall, they can just scroll down to outstanding claims. Just by looking at the screen, they know that, okay, I've got to follow up on these 2 claims because it says due today. And these are the claims that have been followed up on already. One of them, we were following up in the morning. In the afternoon, someone actually got the check in the mail, or another employee marked the check as paid. So it turns out the same day you followed up on in the morning, you ended up getting the check in the mail. That's why it says claim received, because you're looking at today's dashboard. I will get into details about how these patients how these claims end up on this list. But immediately, just by looking at it as an owner or the manager or even any team member who deals with insurance and AR, I can just see which patient follow-ups have been done already in terms of outstanding claims, what's happened with them. It says needs more info, this one's appealed. And if it doesn't need to be followed up on again, for example, this one, process check is in the mail, it doesn't need a follow-up, automatically the system will mark it as follow-ups done, and it doesn't need further follow-up. So you won't see this follow-up for this claim again. You're seeing it today because that's what was done. Let's say in the next 2 weeks, when you do receive the check in the mail and someone in your team marks the check into the Open Dental, this will come off this list completely. Okay, so it's automated. And I can actually see as an owner that, okay, this claim was actually followed up on periodically 4 times total. All right, so now let's head over to the actual aging section. So up top, I have this section called aging, which is pretty much insurance, money that's owed to your practice, whether it's insurance or patients, right? So we're gonna focus on insurance for now. So the first tab is outstanding claims. So this looks similar to what you guys saw in the Open Dental outstanding claims report, right? If initial glance looks the same, patient, who the provider is, when the claim was sent, the date of service, the carrier. Now, one thing we do differentiate on is we don't just show you the gross fee, but we actually show you the insurance estimate right away on the first screen. So for this specific claim that was sent on August 14th, we expect $170 from the insurance, all right? All right, so let's say we're looking at this list, all right? And your insurance person who deals with claim follow-ups is looking at this list, and they're literally just looking at this list, going down the list and deciding who they need to follow up on. Right away, they know they don't need to follow up with this because they see the status, it's in the mail, and follow-up action plan, follow-ups are done, okay? So they can move on to the next one. The next one, they already followed up on, it was resubmitted via paper, and the next follow-up isn't due until tomorrow, so they don't need to get to it, all right? So the next one, this wasn't received, it needs to be resent, and the follow-up is not due until the 21st. So quickly, they can just look at the list and say which one needs follow-up, which one don't. It kind of builds in that efficiency and speeds them up, right? Like for example, this claim hasn't been called at all. So if I click on this claim, let's say your team is about to make this call. Now look what happens. Sheree, it gives you all the information you need for the claim to be able to follow up on this claim, whether you call the insurance portal or you're talking to the insurance rep, et cetera, et cetera. We also going to pull any entries from the claim status, and I'll show you this in just a second. I showed you in the Open Dental video where you can where you had the tab for claim status, and you could track by custom claim tracking statuses. This is where they would show up. So it's a two-way sync. Whatever you have in Open Dental, we will pull that here, and if you do follow up on this patient, it will be written back to Open Dental, which I'll show you in just a second. All right. Of course, it shows you all the ComLog entries that you would need without switching back and forth between this and Open Dental. So let's go ahead, and your team member is just maybe they check the insurance, or maybe they call the insurance to find out more information on this claim. So when you click on this, they know all these statuses can be customized. When we onboard our clients, we customize the statuses, whatever it is you want. You can have unlimited statuses. So when your team calls insurance, they pick the best status of that claim, which they decide after they speak with the person. Let's say the insurance rep, they speak with the insurance rep and they tell you, oh, they didn't receive this claim, we need to resend it. automatically selects the next follow-up date for you, which is set to 2 weeks from now. You can change it, of course. I want to make it the next week, okay? And the auto note is entered for you. Outstanding claim follow-up, so-and-so. This is follow-up number 1. You followed up on so-and-so date, time, and the custom note. You could even write a custom note here. Spoke with the rep, and this is the second time, and they haven't received claim yet. Okay, whatever it is. And then let's go ahead and save that attempt. All right, so now when you save it, you can come back, it brings you back to the screen. It updates the status as did not receive, resend. Now you can forget about this claim because the next follow-up isn't due until the 19th. So now you can just go ahead and move on to the next claim on the list. All right, as I said earlier, you want to focus on past 30 days. All right, so if I go back to my dashboard, and let's say I'm wondering throughout the day how much work I've done, or in terms of, let's say I'm the owner or the manager, I want to see which claims were followed up on. I can immediately see that, hey, yes, these patients were followed up on. And I just showed you, we followed up on Sheree's claim, and it shows you the check mark there, okay? And I can see that one attempt was done, and the next follow-up isn't due until the 19th. And I can see here that these 2 claims are due. So when it's the 19th, and the team member logs in, or whoever's responsible for it, it will be in front of them to call. So they know. This is how we create accountability. This is how Teamio sets up automated accountability, which tells the team member, hey, these are the claims that need to be reached out to today. So we've solved that problem, as I mentioned earlier in open-ended video, that if the team member is following up on a claim and they need to follow up on the same claim again, they need to create a reminder of some sort. Well, now we eliminated that. Teamio will take care of it for you. It created the claim follow-up for you. And when it's due that day, it will be in front of you on your screen. It will say due today. All right, let's look at what happened with this claim follow-up we just did, right? So if I go in here, actually, let me go back and see what date it was. Date sent was September 3rd. So let's go in here. So if we go to that specific patient, okay, September 3rd, this was the claim, all right? And let's say I want to look at the status history. You can see there's a note in there automatically. You no longer need to do this manually. Teamio will insert that note into status history attached to this claim. When the timestamp came in, what the status of the claim status was that you selected from the dropdown, and also a note coming from Teamio saying outstanding claim follow-up number 1, and here's the custom note that you wrote. Okay, all right, so that's that. So, well, that's great and everything, but what happens over time? That what if the claims you've been following up on actually come through the mail? Like, for example, let's pick a patient. Let's just actually pick Sheree. Okay, let's say you followed up and this claim actually came in the mail. All right, and it's processed. Someone in your team enters the claim into the system. I'll just enter it, finalize the payment. All right, it's done. Again, the manager, owner don't really care. This is happening throughout the day. You're getting checks. Also remember, this may be done by the outside agency, so they're entering checks, but it is all tracked as long as it's happening within Open Dental. So if I go back, and if I want to see, if I go to my something called Team Insights, which is where we get to see what's happening today, week to date, month to date, and custom time frame, let's head back to today. If I scroll down to the aging section, I want to know as an owner, practice manager, or even a team member who does insurance stuff in the office, well, I can see in outstanding claims, total, we've made 6 follow-ups today, and who it was done by, when they were called. And in fact, we've actually received in the office, or someone in the office or in the outside agency marked 4 claims paid. And I can see when the claims were received and what the exact insurance payments attached to them. Okay, we pull this automatically from Open Dental and we show you that information. So you can see right away that this I just did in front of you, Sheree's claim was marked, that's the payment received from the insurance, $703. That's what it shows up here. Okay, so remember what I said earlier about Open Dental Claim Report is, sure, I can track things manually, but over time, at the end of day, end of the week, end of the month, or any custom time frame, I have no idea as an owner and manager, or even as a team member to know, hey, how many claims have we actually followed up on that were like pending past 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? And how much have we actually ended up collecting on it? So for example, if I go to the end of the week, I'm the doctor, owner, manager, and if I go to the end of the week, I can see that, okay, 4 claims worth $1,593 were put back into, right? This is the money you collected from our follow-ups, right? So these follow-ups may have been happening for the past 6 months, but it just happens that as soon as the checks are entered into Open Dental, we track them for you. So now I can do things like, okay, show me the end of the month, all right? End of the month, we've received about $1,800 worth of claims, but we've followed up. We've done over 17 follow-ups. Some of these may be with the same patient, but we tell you exactly who was followed up for and which team members. So if you've got multiple team members, we'll show you that information. All right. What I want to show you is this. So now you can do custom time frame. Let's say, for example, January 2024. Let's look at the entire last year, right? And December to December 24. I want to look at all the claims that we followed up on. So we followed up on over pending claims over past 30, 60, 90 days, but 162 follow-ups, right? These claims would not have been paid if we hadn't followed up on it, right? In total received, we got back 124 different claims, okay, that were paid due to follow-ups, okay? These were all the claims that were being followed up on. So technically, $52,000 worth of money, $52,000 went back into the bank, right? That's what we ended up collecting, which we wouldn't have collected if we weren't following up. So as this to me is super important to me as an owner, because I do tie my bonus of the insurance team to this number, okay? Anything past 60 days, if they're able to recollect, I tie that bonus to that. Okay, so if you have multiple team members, we even break it down by team members. This team member did in January, here's how many calls, here's how many received, all the way down to the entire year. Okay, and if you have a second team member doing it, that's that. Well, always remember, this is test data. But this is the kind of breakdown you need to be looking at to make sure your system is dialed in when you're dealing with insurance in your practice, especially insurance AR, because depending on the volume of patients you're seeing, if you're seeing 20, 30, 40, 50 patients a day, and if you're a large practice, group practice, you've got lots going on and you need a bigger picture. You need a visual like this to get an idea of what's actually happening in your practice. All right. This applies same with an agency. Like if you've got an outside agency and I want to know how many, what my agency is worth to me. Well, last year, I can literally add the agency employee as onto this portal by adding them as an employee of my practice. And then I can see exactly what they're doing, how many claims have been followed up, the claim history, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so I hope this was helpful and we'll come back to the video. This has simplified the process so much for me and my team. If in the future I decide to outsource my insurance AR to an outside agency, I can easily add the team at the agency as an employee or multiple employees onto the platform. And then there's no difference between me communicating with in-office team members or the agency. But now I have an easy way to see what the agency is accomplishing for me on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. I can see which claims I'm being followed up on, how many claims are actually getting paid. So technically I can actually pull up reports and say, hey, show me in the last 6 months what this agency has accomplished for me, how many claims they followed up on, and of the claims that were being followed up on, what got paid. Meaning, as an owner, now I get to see the ROI of my spending for this agency. All right, that was a lot, but the bottom line is this. The biggest headache with running an insurance practice is when things don't go as planned. And since we're talking about insurance AR and claims, it usually happens when claims are not paid to the amount you'd expect, meaning you're leaving patient balances on the accounts, and depending the amounts of these balances, you're going to have some upset patients. When your team is on top of the patient's insurance benefits and things are set up correctly within your practice management system, you're not only going to make your team's job easy when it comes to presenting finances to patients, but you're also going to schedule efficiently, meaning you're going to avoid having holes in the schedule. If things are also set up correctly, you're not only maximizing the chance of you getting paid 100% of what you produce or close to 100% of what you produce, but you're also improving patient flow throughout the office for efficiency. Now, if you've sent in claims after doing all of these things correctly, there's still a chance your claims are not paid on time or, in amounts not up to what you would expect. So a system for following up on these unpaid claims is super, super important. But if your in-house team or the remote team isn't doing this consistently, things are still gonna fall through cracks, which means that's why as an owner or the manager, you still need an oversight on this entire process. That's it for today. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to share it with your colleagues if you found this helpful, and we'll see you next time.